Not really sure exactly which direction this is going to go this morning. I kind of had two different messages, and they're tangentially connected, but when going through all of these notes, I was kind of thinking, it seems like I'm going to be everywhere this morning, but the basic theme here is be ye doers, and not just hearers. So I want to start out in James to read chapter 1, verse 22 through 25. But be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whosoever looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, and he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. And then let's go ahead and turn to Matthew 7. Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you, depart from me, ye that worketh iniquity. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. The past few months, foundation has been a theme, and and the importance of where you're founded, where you're standing, and I just felt led to share this verse where it talks about being founded upon a rock, and whosoever is founded upon that rock is not going to get blown by the storms of life. But we see just as it was last week, just as it was the week before the last time I spoke. We still see this violence taking place, in the streets, and it's the way that it looks is, and some of our politicians have even promised that it's not going to stop. So, we see this happening, and this is the first time in this country during my lifetime, at least, that I've seen this type of environment that the apostles must have faced, when entering a city and having a daring message of Christ's sovereign authority, because these people are completely against authority, and it's not wrong to say they're anarchists, that they just want to tear down structure. And when we see that and we understand what's behind that, we see the anger in the streets. We shouldn't be surprised. For example, Portland, Oregon, it's famous for its protests and demonstrations. It's always been that way. It's been just a hub of where you go to do a protest, and it's in its history. This is not something new for them. But what is new, however, is the fact that this group behind the protest seems to have an international backing. What almost amounts of like a international criminal enterprise behind these groups. And if you look daily, like I do, I follow some guy that's up there, and he's basically a reporter. You would probably never have heard of the publication that he works for, because it's so small. And this guy's out there himself doing the reporting, blending in with the crowds. He's been attacked several times. He's been beaten up. He's had things thrown at him, but he's out there doing this reporting because you're not hearing it anywhere else. You don't hear the things that he says. He reports on who's been arrested every night, and the resulting factor of them being arrested is them being released. They were arrested and they were released. They were caught, they were released. And these people who have committed violence, these are people who have actually sent police officers to the hospital. They were arrested and released in the same night. This is why this cycle of violence keeps going, because there is no being held to accountability, of actions, and that's where we get the debased mind. Just give them over to what they want to do, and this is going to be right in their own eyes. You have half the government saying that this violence needs to stop, and wants to put a stop to it now. And then you have the other half that says the violence that you're seeing on TV and through these reports, it's all just a myth. It's just, it's spun in a way to paint people in a bad light. So it's, the same saying that we've always heard is, don't believe your lying eyes. All this has been propagated by a false narrative. If you think of what has caused all this, and just thinking about, we were talking before church and talking about these things, some of these things, and people having visions and dreams. I remember a year ago, and this was back when you had 20 people in the Democratic primary trying to run against each other, and there were people in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, on the Bernie Sanders team that said, if Bernie Sanders doesn't get the nomination, we're going to burn Minneapolis down. And they were saying this a year ago. This was something, not having to do with any kind of, violence against one person by a police officer. This was nothing to do with that. This was, if we don't get our way, we're going to burn this city down. And you see that in conjunction with these other things, in conjunction with this financial backing that these groups obviously have. Plus you have the people that have all this money in Hollywood that are supporting all this, and you have the politicians on a certain side that are giving it a voice and giving, or allowing it basically to have legs. You see all this stuff coming together, and it's just like a perfect storm. You have all the things there that you need to create this chaos and violence. So, but all of this has been propagated by a false narrative, supposedly about the way a police officer, detained a criminal. This was what we're told why all this is happening. So we have to, and I'm going to kind of shift over now into a different part of this. As Christians, we have to step back and ask ourselves, where is God's will in all this chaos and all this stuff going on? We have to constantly be seeking where His hand is working. Just as you brought out in Los Angeles, there's a bunch of people. There's people just setting up tents, and people are being drawn to those tents because they have so many questions and they have such a need that they're not finding a fulfillment out there in the streets where all this stuff is taking place. But I wanted to go to, and I'm not really sure, has anybody heard of the Smith-Mundt Act? You remember, I never really learned about that in school, but it was first passed in 1948. Does anyone have an idea about the Smith-Mundt Act? Okay, well, in 1948, there was an act, but it in the Smith-Mundt part is because the two people that collaborated on this, but it was basically saying that the government could not use propaganda against its own people, but that they would allow propaganda to be exported, through American, radio stations, whatever, to other countries. So this was something that was saying, okay, this is okay to kind of exaggerate and to use propaganda for other countries, but it could not be used on American populace. So, well, in 2012, there was a repeal of this Smith-Mundt Act, and it was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012. It was snuck in under the Obama presidency into the National Defense Authorization Act, which the NDAA is known, is made famous for, sneaking things in. Just last year, they snuck in a thing that raised the tobacco purchases. You have to be 21 now. That was snuck in under the National Defense Act of 2019. So I'm going to show, this is a couple of quotes from this, just to kind of outline it a little bit more. The Smith Modernization Act, or SMMA, was buried in the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act for good reason, because it repealed the 1948 Smith-Mundt Act. The Smith-Mundt Act is also known as the U.S. Information and Education Act. I like how they put, they're educating people using this propaganda and exaggeration, which authorized the State Department to engage in propagandizing foreign countries as a form of public diplomacy. The SMA, the original, established that via the Broadcasting Board of Governors, Voice of America, and Radio Free Europe, the U.S. State Department and Office of Public Affairs were authorized to disseminate propaganda to foreign publics, but were strictly prohibited from releasing that same propaganda in America for public consumption. Put simply, our government was permitted to lie to people in other countries, but not to us here at home. And that was the big thing. That was, a upholding of accountability to news organizations. That was, you cannot use false information, and disseminate that as news here. So going on, and I should have got the reference to this, but someone wrote this up to kind of summarize this happening. The prohibition was lifted in 2012 when the SMMA, the Modernization Act, was signed into law by President Obama, allowing the same propaganda disseminated by our government to foreign publics to now be released in the U.S. for the very first time. And yes, our government is also now allowed to create propaganda tailored specifically for U.S. public consumption using any media as it sees fit, while remaining anonymous as the source of the material being reported. So they don't even have to put out there that this, how sometimes you'll see something on, and they've got to put down in the bottom in the fine print. You can't read it because it's so pixelated. This was, gathered from this. This is where the source is, or whatever. It's on the screen, but you can't hardly see it. It's like the fine print that they put so small at the end of a contract. You're required to put it there, but you're not required to use a visible font size, basically. So this is what happened in 2012. So the main reason why I wanted to go over that, because I remember when this happened. I remember somebody reporting on this, and I thought, that's kind of crazy, And of course, back then I was trying to figure out different things. Because it wasn't as in your face as it is now, and and when you see that kind of thing coming, and you see that thing passed, and someone can find it in buried amongst everything else in this National Defense Act, because there was actually money put towards this. That's one of the other big problems. This is funded, with this act. So when I started seeing that, I kind of started looking at news a little bit more differently, because I can understand, going out and saying, well, in America we do it this way, to other countries, but when they're turning that around and basically lying to their own citizens, it's a different story. So, whenever the current president of the country says that mainstream media is the enemy of the people, he kind of has a point, that this is they're not being truthful, at the least, they're not being completely truthful. And that's the one reason why I wanted to go over that is because, and this is not an America-centric thing. I know that this is, when Jesus makes a statement, it's not well, it's just specifically for America or specifically for a country, but we got to look at this in a big picture. And this is one of the things that has happened in our country, but in other countries, I'm sure it's the same way, that they have media that is not completely honest. So I'm going to go to Matthew 24, verse 4. And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. This was one of the warnings that he gave you. This was the first warning that he gave to those asking him what is going to be at the end of days. What is one of the signs? He said, Take heed that no man deceive you. Well, with this, Smith-Mundt Smith Modernization Act, it makes it's a lot open. It's not against the law for your government to deceive you now. So, in this country at least, we can see how that can take effect now much more clearly and easily. So how we navigate this information and follow the truth while avoiding deception. And going to John 14, verse 6. Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And kind of reflecting back to earlier, this is something that we have to do every day. We have to seek this every day, because if we're just a hearer, if we just let it passively go by us, and we're not actually putting this into we're not seeking Him every day, we're not putting this into practice, then this is going to be like, okay, we walk up to the mirror, we see what we look like, we walk away, we forget, and we're forgetful people. We're human. We have schedules for a reason. We have our phones chirping at us for a reason. Hey, remember to do this. I make reminders about everything now. So, Lauren will say something to me and will remind me that next week at this point, this time, there's an appointment. I have to automatically put it in my phone, or I will forget it. So, we're forgetful people. So if we don't put this into daily practice, if this is not a life for us, if we don't live this way, if we don't daily put this into practice, then it's going to escape us. In Matthew 16, verse 24, then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited for if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. So I wanted to go over this because it was, it states here, that it doesn't say, then Jesus said unto his disciples, if any man hear me and listen. It says, if any man will come after me. Well, it's a diligence there, come after me. Let him deny himself. That's putting death to the old man, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. It's not going to be an easy thing, but there's imperatives there. There's come after me, diligently seek me, follow me, take up his cross, because this is not going to be an easy road. There's some things that we have to do. It's not a passive, it's not a spectator sport, as they would say. So as Christians, we must be careful with what we see and how we react to it, because we see all kinds of things every day that can invoke, emotion, and more that I can see that invokes emotion. If we're reacting emotionally, it's more likely to lead to unfruitful results. I mean, if you think about it, what have you ever done good if you reacted just emotionally to something? It's better to always hold your tongue and kind of think about it or ponder on it, or but if we're reacting just out of emotion, it's always going to at the least be unfruitful, but at the most do damage and most likely turn people away. Spirit, soul, and body means that God leads our emotions, not the other way around, not our five senses or what we see or what we hear or feel. And that's a popular word these days. Well, whatever I feel is going to lead my emotions. It's going to lead my life. And that's a lot of problems that I see with the younger generation now. It's what makes me feel good, or what I feel like we need to save this planet, so I'm going to put everything I have into saving this planet, and therefore you unknowingly sometimes lift up the creation to that pedestal of God. You create an idol out of the creation. So, we have to be daily doers of this faith. Grace covers all, but we have to be the ones to partake. We have to do something. We can't just not do anything, just be a hearer of the word. So Galatians, that's really small. I didn't know that was going to be that small up there, but this is the Amplified, starting in chapter 5, starting in 16. But I say, walk habitually in the Holy Spirit. Seek Him and be responsive to His guidance. And then you will certainly not carry out the desire of the sinful nature, which responds impulsively without regard for God and His precepts. For the sinful nature has its desire, which is opposed to the Spirit, and the desire of the Spirit opposes the sinful nature. For these two, the sinful nature and the Spirit, are in direct opposition to each other, continually in conflict, so that you as believers do not always do whatever good things you want to do, but if you are guided and led by the Spirit, you are not subject to the law. Now the practices of the sinful nature are clearly evident. They are sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, total irresponsibility, lack of self-control, idolatry, sorcery, hostility, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, disputes, dissensions, factions that promote heresies, envy, drunkenness, riotous behavior, and other things like these. I warn you beforehand, just as I did previously, that those who practice such things will not enter the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit, the result of His presence within us, is love, unselfish concern for others, joy, inner peace, patience, not the ability to wait, but how we act while waiting, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature together with its passions and appetites. The reason that I like that in the Amplified is it says in the very first verse there, but I say walk habitually in the Holy Spirit. Seek Him and be responsive to His guidance. It's not just something that, okay, yeah, I'm on the side of Jesus, like looking at it as a line drawn in the sand and I'll stand over here. No, if you stand over there, you better be doing something. This is not a passive thing. So, this is something that we have to seek out every day. What is the will of God doing in the situation? Where can I be in His will? I want to be His hands. I want to be His feet. I want to be His light to this dark world in some way. I want to be used by Him, an empty vessel, completely surrendered. This has got to be our motive, to be. But also it says, which responds in, and then you will certainly not carry out the desire of the sinful nature, which responds impulsively without regard for God and His precepts. So this is this emotion thing. This is responding, letting your emotion drive you, letting the body of the three-part being, letting the body drive your emotions would be the responds impulsively without regard for God and His precepts. This is like this is just like the driving down the road and you've got somebody and they cut you off and you get mad and I was hearing, I heard somebody tell this story and they had a Jesus sticker on their bumper and it's like, how can I be mad at them? And so you get up beside them or whatever, and then they're, you can see that they're angry too. They're going down the road and they were angry too. So it's kind of like, what kind of testimony is that? But this is the, responds impulsively without regard for God and His precepts. So this is the sinful nature that we have to put to death. For the sinful nature has its desire, which is opposed to the Spirit, and the desire of the Spirit opposes the sinful nature. These two are constantly in conflict and cannot exist together. So, and then it goes on and lists all these things. But if we're in His will, there's no law against that, because this is the things, the virtues, the fruit of the Spirit, the evidence that we have the love of God within us. So this current situation that we're in, the current environment, the current temperature, if you want to use that word, of the emotional chaos that's going on in the world, we're primed for deception here. I mean, this is not something that's it's not going to sneak up on those who are looking for it. But there's several people out here that will look one way or the other. They'll tune into ABC every night. They'll tune into Fox News every night, or they'll just look one way or the other, and they'll take whatever's said as, okay, that's the truth, because that's a news organization, and some of us have our bias where, I don't ever watch CNN. CNN's just, and it's true, they're very biased, but you have, on the other end, you have others that are very biased. But you also have these individuals that are out in the midst of all these things and actually taking notes of what's going on. And right now, I see that as the most honest press, because they're out there, they're taking videos, they're actually putting themselves in danger for this, just to get the truth out, and that's what we should be seeking, is the truth. Not that we're promoting people to get out in harm's way, but you know what I'm saying. It's you've got these big corporations who have funding to put a certain message out there, and we can almost see that message strictly playing to your fear, to your emotions, and this is something that we have to guard against, because that's the point of it. The point of it is the point of propaganda is to tell one side, to guide people in a way that you want them to go, and to herd. It's basically to herd a populace to a certain end. And we have to be careful about that. We have to see the truth every day. We can't just, it's not a passive thing. We can't just, oh yeah, I know it's there. I saw it, yesterday, and go on our day without constantly looking for where God's will is and where we need to be in His will. We have to be a surrendered vessel each and every day. Sometimes we probably won't feel like it. We'll probably be tired. There's that sinful flesh, coming up. And could you not stay awake? Even Jesus had to deal with that with his disciples. You not stay awake and pray with me. So it's not a funny thing, and this is, with everything that's going on, with the things that are coming up in the next couple of months, this is something that it's probably going to get bigger. We're probably not seeing the height of all this stuff that's going on, and it can be fearful, but also at the same time we need to focus on the good report. We need to focus on the truth and on what God's saying. He never said it was going to be a bed of roses. He never said that it was going to be an easy walk. But this, He clearly says, you will be killed for my name's sake. This is stuff that's going to happen. So we don't need to be surprised when we start seeing these things magnify and just exponentially increase. The violence and the hate and the emotion. But we do need to understand that, this violence was even the people that are causing the violence were talking about this a year ago or more, So, this is not something that was hinged off of one police officer. This is not something that was hinged off of, whatever was going on in Portland or whatever. This was something that was basically talked about a year ago or more. So, what I'm trying to get at is, things are not always clear, and they may even look very clear. We talked about that this morning. It's like some of us feel like that there's a clear choice in the election, and we've never seen that. We've never felt like that before. It's like there's a very clear choice. It's like, okay, maybe that's a little, too clear. Maybe we need to. But I'm not saying vote one way or the other. I'm just saying, it's just sometimes propaganda can hurt people, and we just have to be vigilant because we're basically we can be deceived, and Jesus warns against that. You know, be ye not deceived, and that was the greatest thing that he warned against. You know, in the end times.